On Telesat, phone Murray Hill 6-1200 in New York or Market 2-3191 in New Jersey.
Should we adopt the national health is the subject Tuesday night at 8:30 on WABD, New York.
The Johns Hopkins Science Review, presented by the Johns Hopkins University and WAAM in Baltimore. This is the Johns Hopkins University, famed for 76 years for its contributions to science and the humanities. Here in its many laboratories, Hopkins scientists are constantly probing into the still unknown secrets of science, which, when discovered, will be translated into benefits to be enjoyed by you, the people of America. Because we are frequently asked to repeat programs, we are going to answer some of your requests now as we bring you Highlights of Science in Review, portions from programs which you have enjoyed most this year. To open the review, here is Lynn Poole of the Johns Hopkins University.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to the Johns Hopkins Science Review. Now, this week, we bring to a close our winter series of science reviews, and before we start our summer series, we thought it might be a nice idea to review some of the highlights of these programs that have been given during this past winter series. So we selected some of the programs which you, our viewers, have written to tell us have been your favorite programs. Now, one of those you will remember, The Hospital Never Sleeps. Now, I'm sure that most of you have been by a hospital at night and have seen the windows dark and all is very quiet. Everything seems to be in repose, but that hustle and bustle of the daytime is gone. But that repose is deceptive, because underneath that repose, there's a great bustle of activity at night. The accident room is prepared and an injured man or woman is brought into that accident room. There's a sudden need for an emergency operation. A child cries out in his sleep, or a restless patient wants the ministrations of a nurse. These are the things that happen at night in a hospital. We would like to take you behind the scenes and show you the men and women that keep this hospital going with its great activity during the night.
This is the Johns Hopkins Hospital. Nearly 1,000 patients fill its wards and private rooms. During the daytime hours, its corridors are busy with the activity of its staff and visitors. Each night at 9 o'clock, however, its visitors depart, and a hush settles through the corridors. The last of the visitors is now leaving. And when the visitors have left, the lights in its private rooms, in the wards, and in the corridors are dim, and quiet settles over its vast bulk. To the passerby, to its patients, and even to some of its staff, the hospital is ready for sleep. But actually, a great hospital never sleeps. Caring for its patients is a 24-hour job. And when those patients are well, others will come. Here in the children's wards in the Harriet Lane home, nurses are kept busy throughout the night caring for their little charges. A baby cries, and a nurse hurries to its side to comfort it. Soothed in the arms of the nurse, the baby's sobbing stops. In a nearby bed, another child stirs restlessly under an oxygen tent as the spark of life is maintained in the small body. Here, in another ward, an older child is readied for sleep. The nurse works quickly and gently. Sheets are straightened. Fresh night clothes put on. An intravenous injection hampers the preparation, but is necessary in the fight for health. The child is tucked in and made as comfortable as possible for the night. A final drink of orange juice is brought in before the lights go out. And the child is settled for what is hoped will be a night of rest.
At this time, we leave the sick child and turn to another phase of medicine. Doctors are constantly researching in the field of medicine, and they are often aided by artists. The work of medical men and artists in the classroom, in the clinic, in research laboratories, and in the operating room was demonstrated on a program many of you have written about. The Artist and the Doctor. Here you see how art and medicine mix. Practically every bone, nerve, muscle, tissue, and organ in the human body has been sketched by a medical artist as an aid to the advancement of medical science. This drawing, for example, is particularly apropos at this moment when warm winds are stirring pollen around to plague hay fever sufferers. Here we see a cross-section of a head reproducing in great detail the nasal passages. A medical artist prepared this drawing as a teaching aid. The human brain has often been called the guidepost of humanity. Centered here are a man's directives, both physical and moral. As the science of brain surgery develops to a higher degree, we must have drawings such as this from which students may learn the physical makeup of the human brain. Another vital organ of the body is the lung. Here is a drawing of both lungs surrounded by other organs of the body as they actually lie within the body. This drawing illustrates bronchial asthma. To the medical scientist, it is full of meaning and plays an important part in medical research. Here is something quite different. It is a photograph of the human brain. This photograph was taken by an artist who turned to the camera as the medium through which to serve the profession of art as applied to medicine. Photographic art now makes a major contribution to the growth of medical science. This is another branch of medical art. It is a wax hand, which was molded, carved, and painted by a medical artist for use in a medical exhibition, illustrating various types of skin disease. The photograph of this hand was used in a textbook and also in an article printed in a medical journal. This form of medical art is known as moulage, from the French word meaning to mold or to cast. This is a group of portions of the human anatomy which have been molded and painted by medical artists. Molded objects to be used in medical exhibitions, to appear as photographs in textbooks, to be used in medical classrooms to instruct the doctors who will guard our health in future years. Sculptors, painters, photographers, these are the people who make up the new profession of medical art. What we've shown you is only a sample of the wide variety of work they do in their studios, in research laboratories, and in the operating rooms. This is the man who pioneered in the field of medical art. He is Max Bradel, who in 1885 in Vienna began to perfect himself in the art of drawing the human anatomy. Bradel came to Baltimore, where he founded the first school of art as applied to medicine at Johns Hopkins. Today, these students work patiently and diligently, combining craftsmanship and artistry in order that they may soon take their places in this new, exciting profession. Let's look now on another laboratory where new and exciting things are going on. This is the Applied Physics Laboratory of the Johns Hopkins University at Silver Spring, Maryland.
On our program called The World from 78 Miles Up, we showed you the work going on in the field of aeronautics. Do you remember what we told you then about the Aerobee? The Aerobee is a rocket which hurtles through space faster than sound. It was developed by the Aerojet Engineering Corporation and the Douglas Aircraft Company under the technical direction of the Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in cooperation with the Navy Bureau of Ordnance. Since humans cannot yet reach stratospheric heights, scientists have built rockets to probe for information in the upper atmosphere. And the Aerobee is that sort of rocket. It takes the place of a scientist and his notebook. and gathers the data at heights scientists cannot yet go. As seen in this drawing, the Aerobee is a long, thin rocket, 20 feet from fin to tail. It weighs 1,000 pounds. It carries fuel which forces it to travel into the upper atmosphere at a maximum speed of about 3,000 miles per hour. The nose is sharply pointed and contains scientific instruments which radio information back to Earth while the Aerobee is in flight. To the blunt tail is attached a booster rocket which gives the initial thrust for the takeoff to get the Aerobee off the ground. This booster falls back to the ground after the takeoff, and the rocket's motor takes over and carries it higher into the sky. Here the Aerobee is shown ready to take off for a flight from the desert at White Sands, New Mexico. Scientists have shot many of these Aerobee rockets into the atmosphere above White Sands and have been able to secure data of importance like a mosaic made up of photographs taken by a camera carried in the rocket. Snapped at the height of 78 miles above the Earth, the area shown in this mosaic covers approximately 300,000 square miles, from the upper part of Wyoming to the center of Mexico on the south. It is the largest land mass ever photographed within such a short period of time. Through such photography, meteorological information is gathered, data on cosmic rays are secured, and new techniques of aerial reconnaissance are developed. Experiments with craft like the Aerobee bring the public one step closer to the era of rocket-powered transportation.
Another source of power which may someday be harnessed for better living is solar energy, secured from the greatest potential reservoir of power known to man, the sun. In solar power for food and fuel, we explained that the sunlight falling on New York City in one day could yield the power released by the explosion of several hundred atomic bombs. We also told you that at the present time, only green plants are able to use the sun's energy directly. In research laboratories, workers are studying the key process used by the plant to convert sunlight to products of food and fuel. This process is called photosynthesis. In this green leaf, photosynthesis creates the food without which we would starve, and at the same time liberates the oxygen without which we would suffocate. To do this, the plant takes carbon dioxide from the air, and water is drawn up out of the soil and into the stem. Then, making use of the sun's energy, the plant uses the solar energy to initiate the chemical process, which results in the formation of starch and sugar, or food within the plant, and the release of the oxygen we breathe into the air. Let's watch the process as it is carried on in this sprig of the aquatic plant, Elodea. By placing the plant sprig under a high-powered microscope, you can look directly inside the living cell and see the action that is going on here in the elaborate, intricate manufacturing process. Here are the deeply pigmented chloroplasts from which all the energy of the plant cell and all of the life comes. These dense green bodies contain the machinery for carrying on photosynthesis and constitute nature's light trap. All the rest of the cell and the plant carry on other operations indirectly related to photosynthesis. The essential process we are trying to duplicate takes place at an even deeper microscopic level within the chloroplasts. It is this unknown quantity which scientists seek to copy in the process of converting sunlight into energy.
From solar power, we turn to the power of the mind. Psychiatrists and psychologists are constantly studying problems of the human mind, and from this research grows a continuing knowledge. In another program called Is It True?, we dealt with a form of mental coercion, more commonly called hypnosis. If you've ever toyed with the idea that keeping the kids in a hypnotic trance might keep them out of mischief, we again remind you of some of the things you cannot do with hypnosis. Here are some popular ideas which are not true. It is not true that such a device as a swinging pendant can in itself cause a trance. It is usually used only for dramatic effect. The suggestions of the hypnotist and the confidence the subject has in him are the major factors necessary to produce a trance. It is not true that a person can be hypnotized against her will. Scientists agree that there must be a desire on the part of the subject to be hypnotized. Here we see our hypnotist attempting to place the subject in a trance. He is repeating the phrase, "You are feeling very sleepy. You are feeling very sleepy." But it doesn't work. The subject has no desire to cooperate and therefore cannot be hypnotized. The phrase, "You are feeling very sleepy," is in itself inaccurate. Hypnotic subjects are not put to sleep, but in a trance. But now it appears our subject is willing to cooperate with the hypnotist and is going into a trance. Our subject has now gone into a trance, but only because she so desired. A person can only be hypnotized when she wishes to be. If an attempt is made to have the subject do something which is not in accord with her moral code, she may awake and show considerable signs of tension. Remember, hypnosis is not a harmless game and should not be practiced by amateurs. When attempted by amateurs and sensationalists, hypnosis may prove dangerous. Other theories have been proven as fact by scientific research. Another program which aroused your interest and brought us many letters was It's a Fact. In it, we showed you some of the facts behind perpetual motion and superspeed highway accidents.
It's a fact that there is no such thing as perpetual motion. What may appear to be perpetual motion can be explained very simply if you'll watch this apparatus. It is called a Crookes radiometer, and it turns out to be one of the means of showing how heat waves are absorbed, reflected, and radiated. When heat waves strike an object, part of them are reflected, and part may be transmitted while the rest of them are absorbed. Polished metals are the best reflectors known. Hence, they are very poor absorbers of heat. A poor absorber of heat is also a poor radiator. A roughened surface, like this one, for instance, absorbs more heat than a highly polished one. It also loses heat faster by radiation. The color of a substance also affects its absorbing power. A black surface absorbs heat faster than a white one. Lampblack is one of the best absorbers of heat known, and also one of the best radiators. Now, this little device is something you've probably seen in the windows of jewelry stores, where it is used to attract attention by its movement. We will use it to demonstrate the facts just mentioned. It consists of a partially evacuated bulb in which is suspended a light aluminum wheel that has vanes set on it in the spoke ends. Each vane is polished on one side and covered with lampblack on the other. When it is exposed to a source of radiant energy like the sun or a lighted match or even a radiator, heat is absorbed more rapidly by the black surfaces. The adjacent air is more highly heated and rebounds with greater velocity from the black surfaces, hence exerting a greater pressure and causing the wheel to spin. Any source of radiant heat, like the sun or even a match, will cause it to spin. What appears to be motion, perpetual motion, is in this case nothing more than radiant heat at work. It's a fact. On the same program, we showed you how the rush of air between automobiles can cause accidents on superspeed highways. Do you remember this demonstration? It is based on Bernoulli's principle, known to be the reason for the lift of an airplane wing. It may also be the reason for certain types of high-speed automobile accidents. Bernoulli's principle states, in effect, that where airspeed is suddenly increased in velocity, the pressure drops. And if you have two objects like these two boxes situated here, and air is blasted between them, velocity is increased, and you can see what happens. They snap together because inside pressure is dropped, and outside pressure pushes them together. Let's try it again. As air is blasted, pressure drops here, and the objects move together. Now let's substitute two small cars, and you can see what happens.
When scientists learn to use solar power in the way in which plants use it, there will be rapid developments in our agriculture. But there are other scientific developments which may prove of great value to plant growth and the use of worn-out soil. We are still receiving letters about the program Trillium for Tomorrow, which we presented in February. And here now are some scenes from that program about the soil conditioner, Trillium.
Bird's eye view of what happens in your garden every spring. Equal amounts of soil were added to both sides of our box here. Equal amounts of water were given during the growing period, which was 2 weeks. The plants of equal size were planted, one on each side. In 2 weeks' time, you can see on the untreated side, the surface has become hard, baked, very compact. On the treated side, the soil is crumbly, it's porous. It will rapidly take in moisture and allow the air to go down to the roots. Let's take a look at those roots. Here is our untreated sample. The roots are small, restricted to this very small area down there. On the treated side, we see a mass of roots. They permeate the soil in all directions, taking out those valuable nutrients and moisture, which makes the top grow much larger and stronger than the untreated sample. This shows that Trillium helps plants grow.
So much for plants. Now here's Mr. Mr. Thomas to report on this week's radish crop.
Here's a small seed flat in which we planted radishes 4 days ago. This side, the radishes were planted in untreated soil. This side, the soil has been treated with Trillium. You can readily see the effect. Small seedlings have sprouted through the surface of the soil because it is porous and easily workable. The nourishment can get down into the roots. Air can get down into the roots. Where this soil is very hard, many of the seedlings rotted before they even got through the surface of the soil. You can readily see the effect that this would have on your garden. We would like to take you and show you the actual growing process of the plants planted in treated soil.
To condense about a week's growing time into a minute and a half, we have a film by time-lapse photography. Kidney beans planted in the untreated soil on the left and in the Trillium-treated soil on the right showed no difference until they were watered. The untreated soil shrank badly. This, of course, reduced the air spaces. You can see that in the untreated soil, the roots are finding it very hard to reach out and get moisture. There is a hard crust on the surface of the untreated. Of the two seeds that did germinate, only one is emerging. While on the right, that's our treated soil, the roots are growing easily and rapidly. All 5 seeds that were planted have germinated. The seedlings are finding it very easy to work their way through the loose, porous soil.
Well, I'm sure you all find this fascinating to see these things growing like this, but I also know that all of you gardeners sitting at home want to know how soon you can get some Trillium. Well, now, this is a very difficult question. I'm not going to touch it, but I'm going to turn it right over to Mr. Green to answer.
Mr. Poole, Monsanto is moving ahead on production of Trillium just as fast as possible. But at the moment, our limited production is going to be required for an extension of some of these tests that you've seen and others like them under actual soil conditions. On which soils is Trillium most effective? Which crops does it help most? We know already that Trillium is a very big and a very important development, but just how big and how important we'll know later when the results of these tests are in. For example, one whole area we're exploring is the control of soil erosion. Anyone who's tried to grow a lawn on a terrace slope or has seen rain wash deep gullies in a highway embankment knows how damaging rainwater can be. Here again we find that a light surface treatment of Trillium seems to stabilize the soil against this action. We have a simple test to show that here on a small scale. In these two boxes we have identical quantities of the same soil, except that the soil on your right has been treated with Trillium. As Mr. Thomas and Mr. Holliday water these samples, I think you'll see that the soil runs off the untreated sample rather freely. The water running off is muddy and carries a good bit of dirt with it. Whereas on the treated soil, the very little soil is being washed away. In fact, the runoff water is almost clear. To show you this on a larger scale, actually under highway conditions, I'd like to show you now the on-location shots of some of this soil erosion control at work.
These are only a few of the programs that we have presented for you this winter, but they're programs that you have asked us if we couldn't repeat. We wish we could repeat them, so tonight we have tried to give you the highlights of the winter series of the Johns Hopkins Science Review. Now, with this program, we close our winter series, but next week, the Johns Hopkins Science Review will open its summer series. Now, this summer series will be designed to appeal to your vacation time needs and your specific interests of the summer. Now, the programs during the next 3 months will be concerned with the scientific studies of birds, flowers, weeds, geological formations, and many other things that we hope will attract you for the summer. So we hope you'll be with us next week when the Johns Hopkins Science Review presents a program which we're going to call How to Lead Your Dog's Life.
The first program in the Johns Hopkins Science Review Summer Series will deal with the subject of obedience training of dogs. Many of you have had difficulty in training a new puppy. Perhaps you have had difficulty with the pet which tugged desperately at a leash and propelled you rapidly down the street. Or the new puppy that chewed up slippers, rugs, and even the furniture when left alone. Or the dog which jumps on you, very nearly knocking you down. Next week, Mrs. Ramona Albert, an expert trainer of dogs, will demonstrate how to train your dog properly as we present How to Lead Your Dog's Life. The Johns Hopkins Science Review is produced by Lynn Poole, directed by Paul Kane. The associate producer is Robert Fenwick. Associate director, Ed Serro. Art direction is by Barry Mansfield. Your narrators have been Joel Chaseman and Ted Jaffe. Portions of this program have been mechanically reproduced. The Johns Hopkins Science Review originates in the studios of WAAM in Baltimore.
This is the DuMont Television Network.